We're here with Peter Boghossian. He's a professor of philosophy at Portland State University. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Been
Awesome.
a great convention.
Oh yes, TAM's
Right.
very, very great. So in the Socratic
Pedagogy.
sorry. In Socratic pedagogy, you challenge the popular, perhaps mythical characterization of Socrates and his method of argumentation. What do you think is the fundamental misrepresentation there?
God, that's a great question. So some people think, well, okay, so even let's back up and answer it in a more general way. So I use the Socratic method to engage students, to engage prison inmates, to engage people of faith, to help them develop more reliable ways of thinking about problems.
Sure.
And some people think that there wasn't a historical Socrates. In fact, Christopher Hitchens talked about this.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes any difference whether or not there was an historical Socrates. In fact, one of the workshops we went to was about Shakespeare Denialism, people who deny that Shakespeare actually wrote Shakespeare.
Sure.
And they institutionalize that and they give degrees in that. I don't think it matters whether or not there was an historical Socrates. I think what matters is the method that he gave is incredibly effective for disabusing people of either bad ideas or for helping them to think through problems.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good answer to that question. Why is a more accurate understanding of Socrates' method so important? You kind of alluded to it, but maybe give a little bit more detail as to what makes his method so powerful and so important.
Okay, great question. So it's basically a way of asking people questions to see if they agree with themselves.
Okay.
So it paves the way for people to convert themselves. They just need that facilitated in somehow. It's an incredibly powerful tool that's no cost. That's the other thing that's interesting to me about it, is that we can use that, we can teach people how to use these methods at literally no financial cost. And you can usually do them fairly quickly.
Do you think it's the Socratic method is limited by being one-on-one, or do you think you can use it, like, say, I don't mean to use it, but you are a professor, say, professor-student relationship or presenter-crowd kind of
You can, yeah. So even if someone doesn't say anything, then when they see another, like for example, in the prison study, when a prisoner sees the engagement between the instructor and another inmate, he can model that behavior. So he can understand. So the idea is this line of literature called cognitive behavioral therapy. And the idea is if you want people to desist from crime, which is an action, and I'm talking about serious crime.
Right, sure.
So violent crime. So the way that you do that is you change their cognitions. So when you change their cognitions, their behavior will follow.
Sure.
So the Socratic method, in a sense, acts as a way to help people to help themselves change their cognitions. It's basically like you're asking someone a question, you're finding a counterexample. It sounds complicated, it's really quite simple. Here it is, here's the steps.
Sure.
Begins in wonder. You wonder about something. What is justice? And someone offers an answer. Justice is X, like justice is paying your debts. This is from the Republic. And then you have a counterexample. Well, what about if you borrow a butcher knife from a man, or in the modern context, like a gun, and he later becomes crazy or she later becomes crazy, do you give them back the gun? Well, then it goes to the fourth stage. If they say yes to that question, then we hold that as provisionally true, that justice is paying your debts. So I thought of an example when paying your debts didn't accord with the example of justice. So basically you're trying to undermine what people think they know. You're trying to help them become less certain and less dogmatic.
Sure.
And so, that's the Dawkins children's book, is that it opens up a sense of wonder for them. Because the sense of wonder has been often closed down by faith and religion. They think they know.
Yeah, they're more concerned with the fairies at the bottom of the garden, to take a quote from Dawkins. They're not looking at the flower, they're looking at the...
Yeah, and then what a sad, tragic way to live your life.
No, absolutely, I think so too. You discuss using the Socratic method as an educational tool and to benefit students.
Right.
Can you give a quick summary about what your position on that?
I teach philosophy, critical thinking, atheism, new atheism, reason, rationality, understanding. So that's at Portland State University. We have these cluster classes. I use it in every one of my classes. And so basically what I do is I try to undermine people's, so even if they have their own their ideological commitments are similar to my own. I really don't have any ideological commitments, but even if they have beliefs that are different from my own, the idea is to help them really examine those. And the way that you help them really examine those is to constantly be throwing out counterexamples. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Or does it work in this situation? Or can you think of a condition under which that would be false? Even asking that question, hey, can you think of how could your belief be wrong? It seems like a necessary condition before any kind of emergent property of thinking about things can come to pass. You would seem to me you would have to know how your belief could be wrong.
I think the part of that makes me most interested is where you not maybe make, but you encourage the student to think of their own counterexample,
right.
Forcing them to be on the other side.
Right.
I know in debate class you're basically forced to do that,
right.
but maybe not so much in a philosophy class or math class, something like that.
See, that's so okay. So one of the things that you'll see happen with that is, and I do the best job I can to tear down those power boundaries so people call me by my first name. I never dress, this is fancy because it's an interview, but I dress in a t-shirt and jeans, and so I do everything I can to really make it so that the person who has the better argument, I mean, that's what it's about. It's not about a title, that I have a doctorate, or it's not about a position, it's not about the clothes I wear, it's not. So we need to do away with those because they help prevent truth from rearing its head or truth from flourishing. So once we can do that, one of the things you'll see as a result of these Socratic questioning is that towards the end of the class, and with prison inmates, everywhere I do, I've done this with old folks, I've done this in hospitals, almost invariably people will start using that method on you. That's when you know they've got it. And when they really have it is they use the method on themselves. So they're just hanging out, walking around, trying to figure a problem, trying to do what they're trying to do, and they impose these ideas or this way of thinking. Well, geez, how do I know that? Is that true? Can I think of an example of something that could be false? Or can I think of a condition that would undermine what it is that I think that I know?
I think that what you're doing is fantastic work as far as that go.
Yeah, it's like a self-contained tool set.
Yeah, it keeps you honest with yourself, which I think
Exactly.
a lot of people, a lot of believers, we say, you're lying to yourself.
Right.
This is, like Dawkins' title, it's a delusion.
It's a
you're
delusion.
Fooling yourself.
And if it's not a delusion, then we have a heck of a lot of people who are pretending to know things they don't know.
And I find that, we obviously both find that extremely dangerous because it leads to all sorts of horrible and bad things.
My new book is A Manual for Creating Atheists from Pitchstone Press, and it will teach you how to talk people out of faith and into reason and rationality.